Thank you for joining me once again as I continue to offer more evidence against the theory of evolution as presented in the show Cosmos. In our last lesson, we looked at the difference between microevolution and macroevolution. We examined how evolution says we came about, but then I used the eye and its complexities to show that evolution could never produce something as complicated as the eye, even though Neil claimed that it did. To make the point even more clear, I examined some amazing things from the human body that defy evolution, such as the complexity of a cell and the DNA found within it. In this lesson, I want to continue sharing with you more amazing things that can be found in the human body that defies evolution. Very quickly, I'd like to remind you of what I said in our last lesson. For simplicity's sake, we can break the body down into 4 areas. Number 1, there are cells, which are the smallest unit of life. Number 2, there are tissues such as muscle tissue and nerve tissue. Number 3, there are organs such as the heart and liver. Number 4, there are systems such as the circulatory system and the digestive system. Let's begin by examining some of the details from the second category, which are the tissues found within the body. I will begin by briefly examining the muscle system. There are more than 600 muscles in the human body, which make up about 40% of our weight. According to Dr. McKay Murray, a professor of anatomy, he said the muscles are the engines of the body, providing the power for movement. So our muscular system is the engine of our bodies. When have you ever found an engine that happened by accident? Again, our muscular system and all that it does offers more evidence of intelligent design. Some of our muscles are very tiny, such as the ones that regulate the amount of light that enters into our eyes. Others are very large, such as our leg muscles. Our muscles are classified as voluntary and involuntary. One must think and send a signal from the brain to make a voluntary muscle move, such as your arms, legs, and hands. However, involuntary muscles are not controlled by us thinking. They work with no thought on our part, such as the heart and the intestines. We also have some muscles that are both voluntary and involuntary, such as our eyelids and our diaphragms. Many of our muscles work in pairs, such as biceps and triceps, which allow us to bend and straighten our arm. These muscles are attached to our skeletal system, which is an engineering marvel in itself. Our muscles make it possible for us to move around quickly and to move with precision. Each muscle has its own stored supply of high-grade fuel, which mainly comes from sugar that we've eaten. It is kind of like an engine that creates a spark to ignite the vaporized gasoline to make its pistons move. According to Miller, it says a muscle cell performs the function of both a spark and the piston. The cell itself splits a molecule of fuel and also exerts the resulting physical power. Even an evolutionist named Dr. Linehan writes this: the body's engines, that is the muscles, demonstrates some surprisingly modern engineering ideas. Who was the great engineer that made the engines of our bodies possible? Again, I must say it was God and not evolution. When we consider how our muscles are controlled by the nervous system, by precise signals, and how some muscles, like our stomach, are stimulated chemically by hormones in our bodies, it shows how complex and precise things are in order to make our muscles work throughout the body. I also find it interesting how our muscles work with our bones. The more you go and work out your muscles, the stronger your bones become to support your new muscle mass. In his book, Human Design, an evolutionist, William Beck, wrote, The intricate structural organization of muscles and the tendons in the hand are capable of such a wide variety of actions. He also said that this phenomenon was one of evolution's most remarkable achievements. Also, consider the following snippet from an article in the magazine Today's Health, which was saturated with evolution, including saying that our hand was evolved from a fish fin. Yet note what they concluded about our hands. If the most gifted scientists cudgeled their brains, that is, to try to comprehend, they probably could not have come up with a stronger or more perfect tool for grasping and delicate manipulation as the human hand. As seen from an engineer standpoint, the loveliest hand actually is a highly complex mechanical device composed of bone, tendon, fat, and extremely sensitive nerve fibers capable of performing thousands of jobs with precision. Think about what these evolutionists have admitted to. They call the hands a remarkable achievement and spoke of their intricate structural organization and how they are highly complex mechanical devices that man could have never came up with. Though they want to cling to their beliefs, their statement disproves the idea that something like our hands just evolved by accident. They are way too complex to have not been designed. Consider what Alan Gillen wrote concerning the design of the hand. The movement of the hand and fingers of a concert pianist is an awesome sight. The necessity of coordination, timing, in order to play Beethoven's Fifth Symphony or Bach's Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring, is a feat that is not accomplished by chance. There is a marvelous skill not only in playing the music, but also in the 70 separate muscles contributing to the hand movement of the keyboard. The hand has been described as the most sophisticated tool in the body. It looks like it was created for maximum dexterity and strength in movement. The hand is capable of 58 distinct movements. These movements allow for dexterity and power for a diversity of actions ranging from piano playing and threading of a needle to holding a jackhammer. This amazing diversity of function is accomplished with the help of muscles in the forearm and wrist. The fingers have no muscles in themselves. The tendons transfer force from muscles in the forearm and palm. Orthopedic surgeons could write many manuals suggesting various ways to repair hands that have been injured. Yet there has never been a surgical technique that succeeded in improving the movement of a healthy hand. It frequently takes over a dozen muscles and tendons working together with the opposing thumb to accomplish one movement. No wonder Sir Isaac Newton once said, "In the absence of any other proof, the thumb alone would convince me of God's existence." When you really think about your hands and all they can do, it is absolutely amazing, and it shows how we are wonderfully made by our Creator. Even evolutionists will agree that while we share some similar muscle movements with the animal kingdom, we stand apart from them in different ways. For example, two evolutionists wrote this: "Only man can combine muscle with intelligence and imagination, plan and purpose, to plow and plant a field, to create a museum masterpiece or the Gettysburg Address. And only man trains to perform the most highly coordinated forms of bodily motion for the athletic arts." We applaud this skill in our species every time we clap our hands for a ballerina or a circus aerialist. Isn't it interesting that men like this admit how complex the human body is and how we can do things that other animals cannot, yet they want to say that we evolved from some lower life form? What this shows is that we did not evolve from any animal because we are different from the animal kingdom. Another example of this difference is the 28 muscles found in the human face that allows us to make facial expressions and to be silly or to express our mood. It has been estimated that we can make around 250,000 different facial changes. Unlike animals, humans are the only ones that can smile. I know some will look at a dog or a primate and say that they are smiling, but according to Cosgrove, primates may appear to be smiling when their lips are drawn back with their teeth showing, But this is actually an expression of anxiety. Even our two evolutionists agree. Many animals can produce a grimace or a snarl, but only man is equipped with such an exquisitely differentiated set of muscles, the mimetic musculature of the face, with no other function than to express and communicate feelings. The next category I want to discuss is our organs. The biggest organ of the human body is the skin. The skin system can be broken down into three areas: the skin layers, the glands, and the hairs and the nails. If you took the skin of a 150-pound man and spread it out, it would cover a 20 square foot area and would weigh about 9 pounds. There is a lot going on in our skin. In his book, The Wonder of Man, Werner Gitt tells us that 1 square centimeter of our skin contains 6 million cells, 100 sweat glands, 10 sebaceous glands, secretes sebum, usually into a hair follicle for lubricating hair and skin, 5,000 sensory corpuscles, 200 glands, 25 pressure points, 12 cold-sensitive points and pain points, 2 heat-sensitive points. Keep in mind that all of this can be found in just 1 square centimeter of the skin. The skin itself has 2 main layers. First is the outer layer, known as the epidermis. The upper part of this layer is dead and is constantly being replaced with new cells. This layer also controls what color our skin will be. Number 2 is the lower layer. It is called the dermis, which is a spongy, leathery area that acts like a protective cushion for the body. This layer is where the hair follicles, glands, nerve endings, capillaries, and lymphatic vessels are located. Though we touch with our outer layer, it is actually this lower layer that detects the sense of touch and sends that information to our brains. The skin is an amazing sense organ in that we can detect a light breeze or a light touch. We can experience emotion, comfort, and other things by how someone touches us. The hair on our bodies also serves as a way to enhance the sense of touch. For example, our eyelashes warn us when dust strikes them. One function for our body's hair is they act like levers to help squeeze the oil glands. Also, hair in the nose and ears serves as a filter. Hairs are programmed to grow only a certain length before they fall out, and most of the time they are replaced with new ones. The end of our fingers and toes are protected by a nail. Most of the nail is dead except for that small white crescent part. The fingernails grow 3 times as fast as the toenails, which again appears to be designed that way based on how we use our toes and fingers. Also, the skin on the underside of our fingers, palms, and soles of our feet have no hair and have a friction type of surface designed for gripping. Very quickly, let's take a look at 10 reasons why the skin is one of our most vital organs. Number 1, it helps keep bacteria from entering our system. Number 2, it protects the interior part of the body from cuts, bruises, and so on. Number 3, it acts as a waterproof wall that holds in the fluids of the body. After all, we are 75% fluid. Number 4, its melanin acts like a light filter which helps protect us from the harmful rays of the sun. Number 5, it is a major sense organ for cold, heat, pain, and pressure, and so on. Number 6, the sweat glands help eliminate waste product and also help cool the skin. Number 7, the oil glands help keep the skin soft and keep it from cracking while providing a waterproofing system. Number 8, the skin acts like a radiator because 1/3 of the body's blood circulates through it, which helps regulate our body temperature. Number 9, like a chemical processing plant, our skin converts the rays from the sun into vitamin D, which our body needs for the utilization of calcium. Number 10, as odd as it may sound, our skin also performs a respiratory function in which it handles about 1 to 2% of the gas exchange in the body. I know I've given you a lot of information about the skin, but I want you to understand just how complex and precise even our skin is. Again, I ask you, do you think all these things that our skin does and how it functions could have happened by accident? Personally, I cannot. To me, it's obvious that it was made that way from the beginning. If you take out some of these functions that our skin does, it would certainly spell disaster for the existence of the human race, which is why all these functions had to be in place at once, which teaches us once again that things did not evolve slowly over time as the evolutionists teach. We do not have time to look at all the organs in the body, but I do want to take a look at a few more of them. Let's look at the brain. The brain is located in a well-protected case we call the skull. A humanist named Isaac Asimov said that a man's brain is the most complex and orderly arrangement of matter in the universe. Question: who made this complex, orderly arrangement? Of course, my answer would be God. The human brain weighs about 3 pounds and can be broken up into 3 main areas. Number 1, the cerebrum is the thinking and learning center of the brain, which deciphers input from the sensory organs and controls voluntary muscles. Number 2, the cerebellum is responsible for our equilibrium and muscle coordination. Number 3, the brainstem controls our involuntary muscles, such as regulating our heartbeat, digestion, and breathing, and so on. The memory capacity of our brain is astonishing. Carl Sagan wrote, "The information content of the human brain expressed in bits is probably comparable to the total number of connections among the neurons, about 100 trillion. If written out in English, that information would fill some 20 million volumes, as many as the world's largest libraries. The equivalent of 20 million books is inside the heads of every one of us. The brain is a very big place in a very small space." One writer said this, "Many researchers think of the brain as a computer. This comparison is inadequate. Even the most sophisticated computers that we can envision are crude compared to the almost infinite complexity and flexibility of the human brain." No one has a problem with saying that a computer was created and designed by man. Why then do some have trouble seeing the brain as being designed, which surpasses even the most powerful supercomputer? In addition to the brain's phenomenal memory capacity, it has the ability to tell our hands to use a certain amount of force and for them to create the right movement to pick up a pen from a desk. We take things like that for granted, but for our brains to carry out that task takes some precise control and mathematical precision. This is just one of hundreds of tasks that we do each day. The brain is so powerful that it can take in multiple inputs at the same time and perform multiple tasks at the same time, which is why you can pat your head with one hand and rub your belly with the other at the same time. Also, you can continue to breathe, hear, taste, and you can talk all at the same time, just to name a few. I am in agreement with the statement made by the brain surgeon, Dr. Robert. He says, "I am left with no choice but to acknowledge the existence of a superior intelligence responsible for the design and development of the incredible brain-mind relationship, something far beyond man's capacity to understand." Even the complexity of the brain doesn't stop the evolutionist from believing that it simply developed over a long period of time. The brain is one of the most difficult organs for them to explain away, but hopefully you and I can see that our brains did not come about by accident, but by design. The last category I want to discuss is the systems that are found in the body. Though there are many, for our time we'll briefly look at the nervous system. The nervous system is the communication center of the body. It consists of the brain, spinal cord, and the nerves. The nervous system has many functions. For example, it regulates the action of organs like the muscles, livers, kidneys, and so on. Monitors the senses such as seeing, hearing, and feeling. Controls our thinking, learning, and memory capacity. The nerves transmit the data at 300 miles per hour to the brain, and the brain then takes the appropriate action. Evolution John Pfeiffer called the nervous system the most elaborate communication system ever devised. Who devised it? My answer is God. In 1989, Encyclopedia Britannica wrote this, Transmissions of information within the nervous system is more complex than the largest telephone exchanges. Again, I have to ask, if it took intelligent beings to make the telephone systems, then why would we doubt that such an elaborate communication system within one human was also made by an intelligent being? It does not matter what system you look at in our bodies or what organs or tissues, they all scream intelligent design. Now let's take a quick look at a few scriptures that show scientific foreknowledge about the body. Leviticus 17, verse 11, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood." We know this now, but we did not know this back during the time of George Washington. During his day, they believed that if you drained the blood, it would make you get better. But this practice is what killed George Washington. Though we know this truth about our blood now, how did Moses know about it way back then? Now let's look at Genesis 3:15. "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed." This passage teaches us that both males and females possess the seed of life. Again, we know this is true today, but just a few centuries ago, we did not. In fact, they had some strange ideas about the process, such as a woman just being an incubator for the seed of man. But how did Moses know the truth? It's because God gave him this information. Genesis 17, verse 12, "He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male child in your generation." It is interesting that God chose the 8th day for the newborn to be circumcised, because there are 3 things that are necessary for the blood to clot. There are platelets, vitamin K, and prothrombin. Without these in place, a child or any human would bleed to death. We know now that it is not until day 5 to day 7 that a newborn has a high enough level of vitamin K to cause blood clotting. So it makes sense to wait until sometime after that to make sure the level is high enough to do surgery. But why did God choose day 8? Oh, I love this part. We have discovered that only on the 8th day that the prothrombin is elevated above 100% of normal, and it makes it the perfect day for the best blood clotting for a surgery like circumcision. Yes, we have been able to cheat this in the medical field by giving them a shot to make it possible for them to clot on the first day, but without medical intervention, the best day is still the 8th day. I have the same question. How could they have known that the 8th day was the best day for this practice? Of course, my answer is always going to be that it came from God. Wayne Jackson makes an excellent observation in his book, The Bible and Science. For example, he asks us to consider the reproduction ratios of certain animals. Rabbits are eaten by many predators, but they reproduce often. It only takes them 30 days to have baby rabbits, and they can have up to 9 at a time. 6 months later, those same baby rabbits can have babies themselves. Elephants do not have very many enemies, and they only give birth to 1 baby at a time. They do not start having babies until they are 14 or 15 years old. It takes 2 years for them to have a baby. If this reproduction process was reversed, there would be no rabbits and we would have too many elephants. But we have this great balance in nature. Think about salmon that hatch in the fresh water. They swim miles out to sea, but when it is their time to reproduce, they find their way back to the same place that they were born to mate. Think about how birds migrate. The Arctic tern makes a 22,000-mile trip from within 10 degrees of the North Pole to Antarctica and back. Scientists still do not fully understand how they know where to go. There are other things that Mr. Jackson mentions, but I like the concluding remarks he makes. Now here is the question that no Darwinist can answer. How did these creatures slowly develop these abilities, which is the evolutionary contention, if they needed them to survive? If they did not need them to survive, why evolve them? If they could not survive without them, how did the species hold on while those traits were developed? By trial and error methodology. Supposedly, over eons of time. If they were designed by a master architect, however, the problem is solved. It does not matter if you're looking at the universe, the human body, or animals. They all scream intelligent design. I want to share with you a few more things from the animal kingdom. There's a video that you can watch called Incredible Creatures That Defy Evolution by a former atheist named Andy Butcher. It wasn't until he started studying these animals that his faith in evolution was destroyed. As he observed the complexity of God's creatures and how everything had to be in place for them to live, he realized that there had to be a designer. Our first creature is the bombardier beetle. This creature defends itself in a very interesting manner. Its body has two sacs of chemicals that explode when added together, but are benign when kept separate. Thus, the first capability of this beetle is that it has two separate sacs that keep these chemicals separated until the beetle needs these chemicals to protect itself. Without these two sacs being in place, the beetle would blow up. The second capability of the beetle is that it has an asbestos-type lining in its firebox, in which the chemicals are added. This firebox lining keeps the chemical explosion from destroying the body of the beetle. This is another feature that had to be in place from the beginning. A third capability is how the beetle shoots its explosive chemical. Instead of it coming out in one big burst, it pulsates the blast. If the stream were continuous, the beetle would be blown away from the chemical coming out of its body. Since it pulsates its blast, it is able to hold on. This is another ability that had to be in place from the beginning and could not have evolved over millions of years. Fourth, the beetle can also aim his protective blast in different directions. That way, he can defend himself from predators that approach him from the front or rear. Now think about this. The evolutionists would have to say that this was something that developed over time. But that is not possible considering how all these features work together and had to be in place at the same time. Otherwise, the beetle would have been defenseless for a long period of time, and if only part of the defense mechanism was in place, it would have killed the beetle. Thus, the bombardier beetle by itself disproves evolution. Another interesting animal that Andy talks about in his video is the chicken and what it takes for it to develop and be born. If you ever put an egg in warm water, you'll notice that they bubble. The reason they bubble is because they have around 10,000 tiny little holes so that the developing chick can breathe and remove waste from the egg. If it was not able to remove the waste from the egg, it would end up drowning itself. What is amazing is the precise timing that is required for a chick to develop and live. It is this timing that defies evolution, because this is another animal that would have to have everything in place at once before it could live. If you peel an egg, you will notice that it has a membrane on the egg. In the top of the egg, there is a little space that looks like it just didn't quite fill in. This small area is called the air sac. More about this in just a minute. On day 5, in the development of the chick, its heart has been beating since day 2. He grows blood vessels. Some of these vessels go to the membrane, which supplies him oxygen and gives a path to get rid of his waste. And some of them go to the yolk to supply him with food. By the 19th day, the chick runs out of room in the egg, and he has developed an egg tooth at the end of his beak. He uses this tooth to poke through and gain access to the air pocket I talked about earlier. This will give him 6 hours of air, and he has to do this on the 19th day. Otherwise, the chick will die. He uses this 6 hours of air to poke a hole through the eggshell so he can get more oxygen to breathe from the 19th day to the 21st day. On day 21, he comes out of the shell, and the membrane and other blood vessels that are left, they fall off, and he is now ready to begin his life. Again, I want to stress that all these steps had to be in place on the right day, and the chick had to know what it was supposed to do at the right time in order for it not to die. There is no way this can be explained away by evolution, but it can be explained by saying that it was designed and created that way by God Almighty. From insects, animals, and the human body, we can see that life is just too complex to explain away by evolution. We could continue looking at animal after animal, insect after insect, and explore more parts of the human body, But I think it's easy to understand when you see one thing after another had to have all its functions in place at once, otherwise it would not survive. This shows that all life was created by an eternal being at once and not by the process of evolution. I hope you will join me next time as we continue to look at more evidence that shows that the theory of evolution is far from being true.